Thanks, everyone. My name is Dave Kaplan. I'm VP Sales Research at Bravo Media, which is part of NBCUniversal. We're here with a great group of individuals today. I think you guys will really enjoy this. I think, as Terry mentioned earlier today, this is sort of the traditional media panel, right? And then the group that's following the next break will be the emerging media panel. But I think these are really sort of more artificial delineations at this point more than anything else, right? I mean, I think we would all say that there's lots of convergence going on in our space. I know at Bravo, at least, our core segment, and I think we have a fan in that prior video who watches Top Chef, right? We attract a really affluent and influential consumer, right? These people are voracious consumers of media, but they're notoriously hard to reach. So as the Bravo brand has sort of innovated over the years, we've extended our sort of tentacles, if you will, into lots of other areas. So now you can interact in a social way on our website, infusing in Twitter content. On mobile, every day you can get updates and extended content from your favorite shows. And we even have a live viewing companion now called Bravo Now, which enables you to really interact with the show, get additional content while you're watching the linear telecast. So, really, digital and emerging media are really part and parcel of the traditional television experience for us. And I think you guys would probably echo that as well, that it's no longer just sort of these silos and that it's really sort of all together now. And I think the measurement challenges as a result of that are enormous, right? And I think we're increasingly tasked by our agency and marketing partners to ensure that we're not just measuring our individual platform, but all these additional components as well, to really give you this sort of holistic and 360-degree view about who you're reaching and how effectively you're reaching them. So with that said, I just want to introduce our panelists today. We have Betsy Frank, Chief Research and Insights Officer at Time Inc., Debbie Reichig, who is the SVP Business Development and Marketing at Clear Channel Outdoor, Deb Esayian, who is the co-president of Emmis Interactive, and finally Gregg Liebman, SVP Sales Research at CNN. So I think just to kick things off, maybe you guys can just each, for a minute or so, introduce yourselves and what you're currently working on. What's currently keeping you busy today? Betsy?
Sure. My role is to oversee all the research at Time Inc., and that would be the content side and the business side, the individual brands and any corporate initiatives, and the print product, and as Dave was saying, any new digital platforms. I have to digress for a second. Because I said this to Gregg, and he was, I think, the only person in the room who hadn't heard it, so I thought I'd say it again. But, I call these panels the Island of Lost Toys panel, the traditional media panel, the panel that's kind of talking about things that are not overtly digital, and I think that's really, that needs to change. That needs to change, ARF, because I think there's so much more that we have in common than that separates us. And I think the more we can think about consumers and consumer media demands and expectations from a holistic sense, the better. So I think what I've been certainly focusing on is making sure that both our internal and our external clients are aware of how consumers are integrating both traditional and new media forms into their lives, and they're not doing it out of a sense of loyalty, and they're not doing it on a kind of one-for-one trade-off basis, but they're doing it situationally, and then making sure that all our brands are resonating across all the platforms on which they appear.
Great, yeah, I agree.
Well, I've been at Clear Channel and in the out-of-home business for about 1.5 years now. And before that, I was in a lot of different media companies, broadcast, cable, local, national, even online. And I think it took all those experiences at all of those companies, aside from the fact that I couldn't hold that job very much, but it took all of those experiences to prepare me for the role in out-of-home. So out-of-home may be the oldest advertising format out there. I'm sure that there is a cave dwelling someplace with, an ad for McDonald's latest Brontosaurus burger, down the block. But even because it's so old, there are so many new messages available right now, so many different changes. You know, we have a brand new currency, there is digital technology, we're working in innovative ways with mobile and driving to online, that I really think that out-of-home we kind of treat it as an emerging medium. And really my role and my job at Clear Channel is really just to get those stories out, just to make sure that everybody hears and understands that it's not maybe what it was a couple of years ago. And that's really what we're trying to focus on doing, just telling those stories.
Cool, and yeah, we're going to get more into that in a second. Deb?
Emmis Interactive is a software company that empowers radio stations with digital platforms, audience intelligence, and cutting-edge solutions for advertisers. And I really see my role as a catalyst in reinventing the medium and helping the medium take all the different touch points like you were referencing, digital, whether it be SMS, whether it be through social media, whether it be through their websites, through streaming, aggregating all that information and all those touch points into something meaningful for the advertiser.
Great.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Gregg Liebman, work on CNN with part of the Turner Corporate Research Group, working for Jack Waxlog. My challenge is to help monetize all the CNN properties, whether it's digital or linear, for the sales group. And it's sort of ironic to be on the traditional research panel because most of my time is trying to represent and demonstrate the value of cross-platform advertiser effectiveness. And just like to take the opportunity to talk to my vendors out there who view myself and my colleagues as researchers. On the ad sales front, we are essentially storytellers. And the more you can partner with us to develop compelling stories that can help advertisers see the value in our products, the better you're servicing us on that side of the business.
Great, yeah, couldn't agree more. So Gregg, just staying with you for a second, and then we'll sort of go round robin on individual topics, and we'll get back to a larger sort of group discussion. You know, last week at the Elevate Video Advertising Summit here in New York, Disney, Turner, and Comcast media execs said that the industry is 2 years away from 75% of TV content being available online and on mobile devices. Now, I know that you've been sort of intimately involved with this through TV Everywhere, where Turner content is made available to authenticated subscribers through Comcast or AT&T Uverse as well. So how has research really sort of helped to inform this effort? You know, both in terms of what content to place, where to make it available, and then ultimately, I guess, how to measure it.
Yeah, that's a great question. Just to bring you all up to date, Turner content is now available through TV Everywhere to almost 70 million subscribers. And research plays a key role in not only deciding what content to put up there, but also through our partnership with Nielsen, we now have extended screen measurement where we're seeing the impact those additional impressions are having on our business. And I'm happy to say that we've seen over 50 individual telecasts in the first 4 weeks of data that have seen a lift from this viewing experience. In some cases, we're seeing over 10,000 additional impressions that are being counted towards C3 viewership. It's great for our sales business to be able to monetize this new way of receiving great content. Consumers love it because they don't have to wait the traditional 7 days or more for new original content. And the other aspect, the other role research played was really trying to understand the consumer receptivity to full commercial ad loads. Because hopefully you all know this by now, but TV Everywhere is based on the model of the same commercial ad load that running on linear would run on online, and that Nielsen would measure that and give it C3 credit. And we've seen across multiple, not surveys, but behavioral studies, consumer receptivity to full commercial ad loads online. My colleague Stacey Schulman is going to take you through a study she did with Magna Global in more detail, but we're consistently seeing time spent viewing, commercial retention being incredibly high regardless of the amount of commercials. So these insights have helped guide Turner in investing in this area and also in demonstrating to the industry the value and opportunity and future of the industry.
Great, thanks. And just curious, I mean, do you think that the 75% number is realistic, or is it?
Well, that's the first I heard that number, so I'm not going to defend it.
Yeah.
I can tell you that things are moving very quickly, and to be in 70 million households within 6 months is very impressive. And also, for Nielsen to be able to actually provide us with weekly reports showing the extended screen viewership has really set the table for this really rapid expansion.
Yeah, certainly on its way. Betsy, now, I mean, your world is probably changing faster than most. I mean, I'm just curious, what % of your time is now spent on digital and sort of iPad, type research versus the traditional print world?
Well, I think it's probably still more in terms of my entire department, still more focused on the brands. And I think we certainly do a lot on the platforms on which these brands appear. And I have been spending a lot of time with tablets lately. But I think what we want to make sure is that wherever our brands live, whether it's on the web or mobile or on tablets, or still very importantly in the print product, that we understand what consumers want from us and need from us, both in terms of the content and the experience.
Okay. And is the measurement approach that you take to measure tablet or digital different than what you're using for traditional print, and how are you bringing the two together to, are they truly reported as sort of separate items, or is there some unification in the works?
Well, yeah, they're truly reported as separate items.
Yeah.
But, more and more, we certainly see the need, both externally and internally, to understand what the total brand footprint is. So there's a lot of very positive movement in that direction from companies like MRI and ComScore. So I'm sure we'll have that settled pretty soon. I think the important thing for us as we look at tablets is to make sure that we're measuring the right thing. You just kind of lump tablets in with digital media. And we're being very careful not to do that, because what we're seeing from all the research we've been doing for the last year is that it's actually tablets are a more magazine-like experience than a web-like experience, because of the touch screen and because of the very personal nature and kind of the immersive quality of both the content and the advertising. So, before we rush to make sure that we have the exact same measurement across every platform, we want to make sure that we're measuring the right thing.
Yep. Debbie, I mean, I work in predominantly television, right? So, I mean, I think out of home and outdoor is something that, it does not sort of intimately touch my world as much. But I've, just in preparing for this panel, I've read about some of the advancements that are certainly happening in the out of home space. I mean, Eyes On, for one, is something that, just sort of fell under my radar, but obviously has been quite a big initiative in your space to sort of put outdoor on, a similar playing field as other forms of traditional media. So what are you doing really to sort of, to sort of revitalize outdoor, if it even needs that, right? Or keep it fresh and sort of on the radar for planners and buyers?
Well, out of home is sort of keeping itself revitalized with all the changes that are going on. Certainly, ROI and trying to prove ROI is one of the major initiatives that I think every media company has right now. And it certainly is a big issue for us, because we've been challenged by our clients to do that. When we tell our stories, they're like, well, that's really good and it's great that you have a new measurement and stuff, but does it work? And so we're always trying to prove that elusive ROI measure. And just to tell a quick little story, there was one out-of-home company that so wanted to prove ROI and the effectiveness of the media that they went to the extreme of actually producing or making up a product that didn't even exist at all, and saying, well, what happens if I advertise this? So the product that they made up was bottled water, and it had the interesting name of Outhouse Springs Water. All right, think about that, right? So they advertised that in out of home. They put up a couple of billboards, and they actually were able to create demand for a product with that name that didn't even exist. And the demand was so great that there was actually a third company who actually produced it, and people actually bought it. So, you know, that was their solution to try and figure out the ROI issue. Now, what we have done is we've tried to approach that a little differently. And so we wanted to be a little bit more comprehensive. So we went to a media analytics company, we went to market share, and we said, you know, you have done analytics and media mix modeling for hundreds of companies. You know, why don't you take all of those results, put them all together, and then see if you could tease out the effect of out of home and see how that worked. And so their process was actually granular enough so that they could do that. And we sort of modeled it after the original How Advertising Works study in the 90s, and so we called this study How Out of Home Advertising Works, of course. And the results were pretty startling. And so they found that not only does out of home increase sales lift, but it also works with all the other media in the buy to make them work harder and stronger. So what it does is it sort of reminds people about the messages that they've seen, you know, during the product cycle in print and in radio and television. And so we really think that that's really interesting and one of the stories that we need to get out. And I won't go into too many more details now, but if you are interested, we will be presenting the paper and the detailed results of that study about a half hour after this panel.
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of research out there that looks at sort of the amplification of television and web when you bring them together. So it's nice to see that if you can complement a buy with outdoor, you see the same types of effects. And
exactly.
It certainly makes sense, yeah. Deb, so I mean, I was saying before about the convergence of new and old media, right? And I think, or new and traditional media, right? Old media is
whatever.
Too disrespectful, right? And you're sort of on the forefront of this, right? I mean, really helping radio stations embrace the digital age, right? And sort of better monetizing their interactive and website content. So, I mean, what are some of the things that you've learned about how you can really better sort of forge these two, traditional and
it's
new?
funny, they were talking about hyper-localism or targeting in the previous panel, and this is obviously an area where radio actually begins its story because radio is a targeted medium, usually by format. And then if you add on to that, its greatest asset, which is it's an intimate medium. So in other words, we capitalize on our relationship with an individual, right? That they wake up with us in the morning. And I'll tell you a little story. So back in the late 90s when I was running a radio station outside Philadelphia, we were pretty aggressive with our web initiatives. We thought we were so cool because we were streaming and we were like the second station to stream. We had no idea what that meant, but it looked cool. And we were working on our websites, and we couldn't get over in the contesting how people were filling out unrequired fields with very intimate information about themselves, like their home addresses, names of children, like things that you would never do, now in social networking. And I got the idea from that people looked at the radio station's website not as a website, but just an extension of the brand. So now if we take that concept to now the level it is today, progressive stations in the United States can do all kinds of advertising measurement through a campaign. I'll give an example of Amtrak. Prior Christmas did a campaign home for the holidays. It was user-generated content where people were putting online with their favorite radio station why they needed a free trip from Amtrak home for the holidays. At a radio station that cumed 350,000 people, which it used to be all about that, it's really about small groups of interested people, 842 people actually participated in that campaign. That's great. But we know exactly who those people are. We know everything about those people. We could see signups by hour, and as Amtrak changed their copy, be able to show them whether that copy was driving more participation, less, or equal to the prior pull out. So when their second pull out didn't seem to be performing as strongly, we went back to a cut that was closer to the first one, which seemed to be strong. And throughout the 6 weeks, we were actually able to do real-time campaign measurement. This is phenomenal for the radio industry to be able to provide that kind of immediate feedback while campaigns going on. But the really fun part about it was, as they started doing more and more of these campaigns, 66% of those 842 people actually opted into a personal relationship with Amtrak, which is what they were looking for. They're saying, can you concierge me through your intimate relationship to a relationship with that consumer? So they're opting in, right? It's great. Well, we can track all of their behavior because they give us permission to track their behavior. They're hoping they'll win tickets or something along the lines. So as we followed that behavior, we were absolutely being able to show some of the patterns of the types of people that were responding and helping Amtrak actually come up with the next creative idea behind their next promotion based on some of the synergies we saw with the people that were responding. So I think that kind of immediate return is now possible because of an intimate relationship that gives us permission to track. And if you have the technology, which many radio stations now do, this is very exciting.
Yeah. Is it helping radio get a better share of sort of local online dollars that maybe it didn't
Yes,
have
it does. And in fact,
You're actually seeing that?
Yes, we are, and we're seeing it both on the local and the national level, but more locally because this tends to be driven more by the local stations at this early stage in the game.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so just bringing it back to the group, I mean, we're talking a lot about what we're doing in sort of our individual platforms to really better measure, better sort of drive results for our clients. But I know Paul Donato from Nielsen, which was my former company, full disclosure, and others will be speaking this afternoon about the development of a cross-platform GRP, right? So to finally, you know, as they say, put TV and online at least on the same playing field. So what do you guys think about this? I mean, do you think it's more important for us to focus on common metrics or common currency that allow us to all be compared side by side, or should we still be focusing on the value that each of our individual media bring to the table? I don't know.
I don't think it's one or the other. I think, but I would take issue with the way you've positioned that common currency. I think we need something out there. We need a metric that allows us to look at individual media, but more to better replicate how consumers are actually consuming media, not to kind of pit one against the other. I think that's a piece that's missing. You know, we've kind of all alluded to it, that the media is stronger together than separate, and so I think that is absolutely needed. At the same time, we're always going to need a more granular kind of metric, you know, more immediate, more urgent, more larger sample sizes, something that can really be used to buy and sell each individual medium as well.
Right. What are you hearing more, though, from your clients? I mean, are you hearing a push to bring them all together, or are they?
I think what's kind of happening more is that the media services that we use, like MRI, are starting to look more broadly at across all the platforms that brands appear in. So it's kind of a little bit of both.
Yep.
I agree with Betsy that we definitely need both, and that the trick is to find the balance. But speaking from someone who comes from an industry where until this year we didn't have any common metrics, I can tell you that we very much need desperately to have a common platform so that, you know, at the end of the day, we have a common currency, common metrics to negotiate off of. But you're right, in addition to that, every media company has something unique, right? We have our own USP, our own reason for being on the buy, something that we contribute that's special. And in order to measure that, very often we need to do some proprietary work around that, and we need some custom metrics. And that's good because that can help you establish the value of what you bring to the party, and that's good. But then you use that to inform the metrics that you then negotiate with. So I think it's finding that balance and finding out how they work together.
You know, if I can just add one thing, because this is important, and Karen Klein will kill me if I don't say it. But I think the most important thing for us is that the conversation around magazine brands become an audience-based conversation, whether in terms of how we measure magazines themselves or how we talk about other media. I think that is keeping this industry at a disadvantage. And so we're excited to be doing a lot more work in terms of advancing that discussion towards more audience-based measurement.
That's great. That's great.
I think the word standardization comes up a lot when I'm talking to advertisers. Like, can you give me something as reliable as Arbitron gives me, so that in this new world where there's all this information? So standardization is the word I hear. You're speaking of a kinder, gentler media landscape, which I really like, by the way. I think that's neat. One comment I always say to local radio is, how are you engaging your audience, and then what do you know about them? I think the most important thing any media outlet can do is know something about its consumer, because that becomes very valuable. I envision someday, not today, not tomorrow, maybe even after I retire, a world where it doesn't matter, which I hope is sooner than later, a world where perhaps it doesn't matter exactly which media got this person. It's this person that I want, which is going back to what you were saying, is it's more of a who is the audience I'm trying to reach. If you take a look at today, $30 billion in advertising revenue right now is going to mediums that have no intermediary whatsoever. Google, iAds, they're all just talking about real-time measurement of their own data. So I think it's about the audience, and I think it's about how do we as media suppliers know as much as we can about that audience, and then provide standardized information that helps advertisers and agencies make good decisions with their money.
Yeah.
See, from my perspective, I think there's not enough focus on providing the common metrics, because I think the industry focuses a lot on the consumer and the media, but not as much on the advertiser. And at CNN, our clients are not buying CNN Online, CNN TV, CNN Airport Network. They're buying an integrated package, and they want to know the value of that package. And it's very frustrating and challenging for me to demonstrate that value when we have different metrics for different media. I mean, unfortunately, I have to go to Arbitron to measure all the viewing that's occurring to CNN TV outside the home. I mean, Nielsen is an in-home panel. That was great when TV was, first created, and there weren't TVs and flat panels all over the place. Just to go back a couple of years, I thought we got some great insights from the Council for Research Excellence video consumer mapping study, which saw that one of the main insights, 9% of all video consumption is taking place outside the home. 9%. That's almost 1 out of every 10 impressions. And a lot of that is not being measured. And then you need to bring in secondary suppliers to help fill that void. And now you have TV viewing from Nielsen, plus TV viewing from Arbitron, plus video from either Nielsen or ComScore. It's very challenging to sell that way. And I think the industry really needs to focus on these common metrics to try to get the advertisers to see the value of this cross-platform reality.
Yeah, great. It's an interesting discussion. I'm sure one we'll be having for years to come, unfortunately or fortunately, right? So I think we only have a couple minutes left. The session today is talking about preparing for tomorrow today, right? And I think that we operate sort of an 80-20 rule in our space where, probably 80% of the time we're talking about 20% of the issues, right? And some of them are probably not things that we should be talking about as much because they're not really going to impact our future as much as we might think. And then other things are flying under the radar. They're overlooked stories that we're probably not spending enough time on. So I asked the panel, and you could choose to answer one or the other. I'm just curious, is there something that we're talking too much about and people should just shut up already because it's not having an impact that we think it is? Or is there something that we should be talking about more?
Well, I think the most overlooked story is that people are still reading magazines, and they are.
Yeah.
And that, again, as a result of the spring release that just came out, young people are actually reading more magazines than older adults. And, I think if you read the trades, you don't even, it's kind of fallen off the radar. So I think the idea that people are certainly leading digital lives, but they're not leading totally digital lives, and everyone still needs to step back and take a break, and magazines are doing that, and young people are aware of it. So that's the story I think I'd like to see more of.
Yeah.
Well, my whole out-of-home industry is going under the radar, so that to me is a big story. But in addition to that, I sort of agree with Gregg's point about we need to think of what we do from the advertisers and clients' viewpoint. And to me, that means looking at everything as a whole, not trying to break it up into little bits, but looking at it from ground zero, how everything works together and how it builds up, and what every single thing that you have to sell, how that contributes to the advertiser's goal of what they want to do, and then how everything works together. I think trying to look at it more holistically is a really good goal of ours, even though we try and get more granular all the time.
Yeah. Agreed.
You're out of time.
Oh, we're out of time? Okay. Then we're keeping on clock, right, guys? Okay, I guess so. All right, well, thank you, everyone, for joining us, and hope you enjoyed that.